Hi friends, thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. I appreciate you. This week we're covering a YouTube suggestion, so thank you Violet Valentine. I ask you all to join me as we remember the Stocks family. The Stocks family were well known and beloved members in their hometown of Lonoke, Arkansas. Joe Carlson Stocks, the patriarch, was a self-employed truck driver, while his wife Barbara Ann Stocks worked in the computer lab of Lonoke High School and for the Lonoke County 4-H Club. Together, the couple had 2 children, Heather and Heath. Heather Annette Stocks was born in 1979 and was a student at Lonoke High School. She was the captain of the cheerleading squad and the president of the Future Business Leaders of America. Teachers remarked just how bright of a student she was, and very dependable for her age. Her peers described her as outgoing and popular, even calling her an angel. Heath Canton Stocks was born in 1976, and according to his family, he grew up like any other boy, rambunctious and unpredictable. Growing up, Heath was an Eagle Scout and played for the Lonoke High School football team as an offensive lineman. He helped secure the state championship in 1994. He would later attend college at Henderson State in Arkadelphia. The Stocks lived in a small brick home down a rural street. They were members of the Concord United Methodist Church, where they never missed a service. The community stated they were super people, real salt of the earth. You couldn't find a better family. But behind closed doors, the family facade faded, especially for Heath. Joe's punishments towards his son were both verbal and physical. He didn't shy away from discipline. This caused a divide between Joe and Heath. Joe believed Heath needed better direction. In their small community, only one man was known to help curb these boyhood issues: Jack Walls. Charles Walls III, also known as Jack, was the child of a prominent attorney who later became a judge in Lonoke. He married his high school sweetheart and had 3 daughters. In the close-knit community, he was respected, a trusted friend, and the Boy Scout leader of Troop 103. Jack was the manager for a firearm and ammunition manufacturer, but spent his free time training the young boys of the community in life skills and survival techniques. Under his guidance, the boys in Troop 103 excelled. At one point, Jack was voted Man of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce, and regarded as a pillar of their community, with parents turning to him to shape their unruly sons into little gentlemen. He was their answer to the growing pains of raising teenage boys. By the time he turned 10, Heath became one of Jack's favored scouts, allowing him to join his inner circle, the Order of the Arrow. Parents were unaware of this secret elite group, and parents were also unaware of his extracurricular activities. Jack Walls was not the outstanding citizen he posed himself to be, but rather a predator. For decades, Jack used his position in the community to ensnare the young boys from troubled homes. He arranged campouts on his family farm, where his troops were allowed to hunt, shoot guns, and use explosives. But for the Order of the Arrow, they were given other privileges. These privileges included access to adult materials, alcohol, and sex. He would make the boys perform acts on each other and himself. During these special meetings, Jack also gathered them around and asked the boys about their lives, interests, and most importantly, what they felt they were missing. Jack paid special attention to these conversations, so he knew how to be what the boys needed. Jack Walls became everything to the troop, and due to this, the boys wouldn't speak a word of the activities within the Order of the Arrow. And Heath was no exception. As mentioned, at an early age, Heath became one of Jack's favorite boys. His strained relationship with his father allowed Jack to move in and replace that role in his life. To stay in his good graces, Heath followed all of Jack's requests and demands. This included harassing his enemies, when in 1992, Jack became the subject of abuse allegations by a former Boy Scout. The boys rallied behind their scoutmaster when 16-year-old Doug Hogan from the neighboring troop in Carlisle made allegations of attempted assault by Jack. Doug was on an outing with Troop 103. He claimed into the night Jack offered him alcohol, and topics of conversation quickly turned sexual. Per Doug, Jack tried to unbuckle his belt, so he told him to stop. He was persistent, but eventually he did stop. Doug got up, woke his friends who were asleep in their tent, and headed for his truck. Jack wouldn't allow them to leave, so he took their keys. He returned them the following morning, and the boys left for home. Doug's parents questioned him on his early return, and he replied by explaining the previous evening's events. The following day, Doug's father contacted Jack and demanded his immediate resignation, and an incident report was filed to the Department of Human Services Child Abuse Hotline and the Lanoke County Sheriff's Department. While Doug and his family brought to light Jack's behavior, Jack had his boys harass the Hogan family. They became the target of constant vandalism and stalking. Heath became a willing participant against the Hogan family. The Order of the Arrow was being raised as Jack's army, and they were willing to do whatever to protect their leader. Other than the rewards, many boys stated threats of violence were used to secure Jack's hold over them, even as going as far as making them dig a hole and telling them if they disobeyed him, it would be their grave. In January of 1993, Doug's incident was reported to Jeffrey Herman, an executive with the Boy Scout Council. Herman submitted a letter to Jack, effectively severing the relationship between Jack and the Boy Scouts. During the investigation, the Boy Scouts notified the Department of Human Services on 3 separate occasions. By June of 1993, Doug was interviewed by the Arkansas State Police, where his case was labeled as a false imprisonment case and not an assault. The following month, Jack was also interviewed for his side, where he claimed he hit Doug's belt buckle with the back of his hand and had no intentions of trying to remove it. Doug's friends, who were also present that night, were interviewed and claimed Jack admitted his intentions with Doug that night. On October 3, 1993, the state police closed the investigation, stating the actions of the suspect did not constitute a crime. Doug's father was upset with the determination, and in November of the same year, convinced a judge to sign off on 2 search warrants against Jack, on the charges of contributing to the delinquency of a minor and third-degree assault. On November 22, 1993, Jack was arrested. However, the following day, the criminal investigator determined no abuse took place and tossed out the assault charge. Jack was released on bond, and his trial was scheduled for April 8, 1994. During his 3-hour trial, character witnesses for Jack, which included several respected community members, a former state representative, and Boy Scouts present that night. By the end, it was determined Jack Walls was innocent of the charges against him. After his trial, the community continued to support Jack as the leader of young boys, and would for many years to come. After completing high school, Heath left for college. Despite the distance between them, the bond Jack and Heath had did not fade. For Heath, only Jack cared about him. Heath returned home nearly every weekend to see Jack, and it was during one of these visits that the truth of Jack and Heath's relationship came to light. During Christmas break in 1996, Barbara Stocks discovered Heath and Jack asleep in his bed. She quickly vacated the home and requested a visit with the family pastor. She sought guidance on how to approach what she had just witnessed. Explaining briefly what happened, she was terrified. On January 8, 1997, she requested to speak to him after church, but never got a chance. The only other person Barbara confided in was her mother. Barbara was very upset and pleaded with her mother not to say anything as she waited for her meeting with the pastor. Ultimately, Heath told his mother and sister Heather about Jack, describing the relationship as a mistake. He explained how he was abused by Jack for years. After the cat was out of the bag, Heath turned to the one man who he felt was always there for him. He told Jack their secret was out. His family knew. Jack became furious and explained to Heath that he needed to take care of the problem. On January 17, 1997, Joe, Barbara, and Heather Stocks left home to attend a basketball game at the high school. After the game, Heather went to a restaurant with friends, and her parents stopped by the house of one of their friends. According to records, Heather arrived at the home first after 10:30 p.m., followed by her parents moments later. The first 911 call from the Stocks home came at 10:38 p.m. The caller hung up. The second call came just 2 minutes later, another hang-up. The police dispatcher who received the calls attempted to call back, but no one answered. A deputy was sent to the home for a welfare check. The deputy arrived at the Stocks home at 11 p.m., where he discovered the deceased bodies of 46-year-old Joe, 43-year-old Barbara, and 17-year-old Heather. They were found in the central area of the home and the kitchen. Each victim was shot several times with a .45 caliber weapon. It appeared the weapon was taken from Joe's gun cabinet. The home appeared to be ransacked and the garage door was forced open. Heath Stocks was nowhere to be found, and they feared something may have happened to him also. His vehicle was not at the home, so a bolo notice to local law enforcement was placed. Initially, they had no suspects, and couldn't believe what happened. The community was small. Everyone was either related or very close. They had no idea who would want to murder the Stocks. The news of the triple homicide left the town shaken. Details were kept tight from the public when the news was released the following day. The police weren't ruling out any possibilities and did confirm the deaths were being investigated as a homicide, and they believed robbery was the motive. Both the sheriff's department and the state police worked together to comb the roads near the house for anything that might have been tossed. The following day, January 18th, Heath was located at his friend's apartment complex, Whispering Oaks. Interviews from friends and evidence recovered from the home led police to arrest Heath that same day. He admitted hours later that he was the one who killed his family. Although the timeline wasn't clear, it was reported that Heath broke into the Stocks home looking for jewelry to sell when his sister arrived at the house. He was kicked out by his dad days prior. His parents came in shortly after, and Heath was confronted. After the confrontation, Heath attacked his family with his father's stolen gun. The affidavit stated Heather made the call to cover up Heath's actions. He also revealed the location of the gun and other stolen items. The next day, divers found the gun in the Washita River near Arkadelphia, just as Heath claimed. According to his friend, Heath had dropped out of Henderson State, which probably only contributed to the volatile relationship with Joe. He did confirm, along with family, that Joe and Heath did have a tense relationship. The home was described as being filled with volatile vapor. However, his relationship with Heather was close, and he often spoke of how proud he was of her, and he and his mother got along well. Prior to dropping out, Heath planned to enlist with the Army and go into Special Forces, but in October, he was arrested for a DUI. After his DUI, Heath quit going to class, stayed up all night, and drank a lot. He was also quick to temper. Heath's arraignment was held on January 21, 1997, where no plea was entered until a mental health exam for competency was completed. He was held without bond in Lanoke County Jail. Despite the charges against him, Heath's family continued to show support. By April, Heath was found to be mentally competent to stand trial. He pleaded not guilty on April 8, 1997. He faced the death penalty for 3 charges of capital murder if he was found guilty. The prosecution pushed for a plea deal, and his family backed them. They asked for mercy of the court based on what they felt Heath's parents would have wanted. They claimed they prayed that Heath would conquer the demon that committed these crimes and be able to make a positive impact on someone else's life. With pressure from his family members, Heath took the plea deal on June 6, 1997. In exchange for a guilty plea, Heath was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. He was transferred from Lanoke County to the Arkansas Department of Corrections. During the investigation stage, Heath was interviewed numerous times by the lead investigator as a means of understanding why the murders occurred. During one of these interviews, Heath admitted he murdered his family after being pressured and manipulated to protect the secret of the man who abused him for years. During this conversation, he speculated he might have been present during the murders. Since a trial was never held, these conversations were not brought to the attention of the court. Heath would later claim that he pleaded guilty at Jack's command, and stated Jack took precautionary measures to ensure he had an airtight alibi the night of the murders. This allegation, or the abuse, until after Heath was sentenced, when Jack Wall's reign of terror would finally end. In 1997, Jack Walls was exposed by another of his victims, his nephew, Wade Knox. Wade held Jack at gunpoint and forced him to confess to his parents what he'd done to not only himself, but his brother and many other Boy Scouts over the years, including Heath Stocks. Jack admitted to everything. The parents were unsure of what to do at first, and even considered allowing Jack to sign himself into a psychiatric clinic for help, since they didn't want to hurt his wife and children. But the courage of Wade brought forth many other victims, who shared their horrific encounters. When more victims came forward, the parents knew something else had to be done. Jack Walls was reported to the DHS Child Abuse Hotline again, but unlike his 1992 trial, a full-scale investigation was launched. The boys of Lanoke came one after the other, interview after interview, exposing Jack's secret world within the Order of the Arrow. On October 6, 1997, Larry Cook, the prosecuting attorney, filed 2 assault charges on behalf of the boys. However, during the investigation, Larry would not cooperate with the chief of police. A letter was written to the judge complaining Larry resisted filing additional charges and hindered the judicial process. Larry removed himself from the case due to his ongoing relationship with the judge on the case and was replaced by Betty Dickey. Betty amended the charges against Jack on November 5th and 14th, adding 4 additional assault charges, 2 counts of violation of a minor in the first degree, and 2 counts of solicitation to commit murder. The solicitation to commit murder charges were a result of 2 interviews where boys claimed Jack instructed them to kill the Hogan family. More assault charges would have been filed had the statute of limitations not run out. Jack Walls' bond was set for $1 million, and since he was unable to post it, he sat in his cell until his day in court. During the trial, several boys and men, including Heath, testified against Jack. Heath stated the abuse started when he was just 11, with the first instance being at a campout where he was introduced to alcohol and sex. It didn't end until Heath was arrested. When speaking about Jack, Heath claimed he loved him and called him Dad. He was a friend and mentor, and he looked up to him because he always made him feel like he was worth something. Growing up, Heath stated he was full of anger and couldn't love. Jack wanted him to be mentally prepared to be a killer. After Heath testified, his maternal grandmother took the stand, where she confirmed Barbara caught the 2 in bed together. The family pastor, Reverend Robert Marble, also testified after he signed a waiver. Due to privileged discussion, the Reverend did not come forward to expose Jack. He confirmed Barbara told him about the relationship. He also informed the courts that during 2 different visits with Heath while he was in custody, he confided that Jack made him kill his family. On January 6, 1998, Jack pleaded guilty to 5 counts of assault and no contest to the 6th. The no contest plea was in the case against Heath. He pleaded this way to avoid more potential charges against him concerning the Stocks family murder. The remaining charges were dropped in the negotiated plea. Jack Walls was sentenced to 4 life sentences plus 2 40-year terms to be served concurrently. During the sentencing statement, Judge Henshaw stated, "I do not have to believe Heath Stocks' testimony, to know that he was your finest creation, and perhaps most vulnerable victim, and to know he became what you taught him to be. I only know that in the very least you are indirectly responsible for the deaths of Joe, Barbara, and Heather Stocks." Jack's defense team filed an appeal, ruling this comment biased, and ultimately the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. It is believed Jack had over 150 victims during his 22 years with the Boy Scouts of America. Jack Walls is currently incarcerated at the East Arkansas Region Unit in Marianna, Arkansas. Since Jack's conviction, there have been numerous calls for a pardon or parole on behalf of Heath. It is widely speculated that Heath didn't act alone. Heath Stocks is currently imprisoned at the Maximum Security Unit in Tucker, Arkansas. Through his attorney, Heath requested for a reduced sentence from the governor. They cited the abuse he endured at the hands of Jack Walls played a large part in his crime. His attorney stated the allegations came to light after Heath's sentence, so he was never properly evaluated on what effect Jack had on his adolescent mind, since the abuse happened for nearly a decade. They requested his life sentence without parole be reduced to a sentence of 40 years with parole, starting in 2025. But this request was denied. Sadly, after exposing Jack Walls, Wade Knox took his own life after struggling with the long-term damage caused by the abuse. His parents founded the Wade Knox Child Advocacy Center in Lenoke, Arkansas, as a safe haven for children and a place for them to get the support they need. Joe, Barbara, and Heather Stocks received a memorial service at Lenoke High School where the community was allowed to mourn the loss of one of their own. A private ceremony for the family was held at Concord United Methodist Church. The family was laid to rest together in the Concord Cemetery in Lenoke, Arkansas. Hi friends, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, so leave them below and we can chat about this case. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more from me. And lastly, if you're not subscribed yet, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. Thank you so much for your support and kindness. I can't say it enough. I hope you have the best week ahead of you because you deserve it. But for now, we must part ways. So stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends.